likely the leading voice on the new modified policy. She joins us on the phone. Jane, Ray McDonald, Ray Rice, Greg Hardy, Adrian Peterson, and now Jonathan Dwyer. What do you think?
I'm stunned. I think probably a lot of people are, but I've been covering this league for a long time, and I can't remember a rash of arrests like this, a rash of incidents happening like this, and to have them all happening after a stringent new domestic violence policy was announced on August 28th it's not, I don't know if a coincidence is the right word, but it's certainly stunning. I think, again, we haven't heard from Roger Goodell in about a week, and these things have been piling up. I think, there are a lot of questions. We have today, we have Dwyer was immediately deactivated. You have kind of a new exempt list that Greg Hardy has been placed on, that Adrian Peterson has been placed on. It seems that there are some new procedures in place. Those haven't been completely spelled out, but I have a feeling we could be learning more about those in the upcoming days.
You mentioned it 20 days ago, the modified policy, 6 games for a first offense, lifetime ban for a second, with the possibility of reinstatement. That said, in the last week, we haven't heard from the embattled commissioner. Is his silence deafening to you?
Well, I think that the NFL needs to present some leadership on these issues. The one thing I'll say that seems to be somewhat encouraging is that they've figured out a way to keep players who are facing very serious charges. I think with Adrian Peterson and with Greg Hardy, there are very serious allegations there. And they've found a way to keep them from playing so that you don't have, the glory of Football Sunday with these players, with these investigations over their head. And they found a way to do it and kind of in keeping with what a fair, NFL PA policy might be, which is that you pay the players. So you sit the players and you pay the players. That said, I think that we need to hear from the leadership. We need to hear from Roger Goodell about exactly, what the NFL is doing. Right now, it seems like they are scrambling, and hopefully they're scrambling to come up with some good policies. I think the good sign is that Greg Hardy and Adrian Peterson aren't going to be playing, and that they've placed Jonathan Dwyer, they deactivated him today, so that these don't become incidents where there is tacit approval of the player while these things are hanging over their heads.
That said, though, you mentioned Hardy deactivated on Sunday. He was still paid. He made $772,000 on Sunday by not playing, even though he was convicted. Peterson is going to continue to get paid. What do you think about the allegations of child abuse, somebody being accused of something like that, yet continuing to make millions upon millions of dollars in salary?
Well, I think that the allegations are terrible. I don't think there's any way to look around that. And not only that, Peterson has admitted to it. I mean, there's no ambiguity on whether or not he did it. I think, some people are saying there's ambiguity on whether it's discipline or whether it's abuse. Certainly, the state has indicted him, so they're saying that it's abuse, and a court of law will decide that. It does look bad to have them paid. However, you still need these players to have some kind of a fair process in a court of law. And unless you're going to cut them, and I think there probably will be players that are cut, but unless you're going to cut them right away, that seems to be a fair way of kind of, if you want to try to wait it out, of having that happen. Now, I think if you are the Vikings, it's really interesting to me because, here's a team that didn't even seem to want to cut them. They're not,
yeah.
or deactivate them. I mean, up until 2 days ago, they reactivated him and said they'd looked at the facts and found that it was discipline and they were totally comfortable with playing him. And yet the outcry is such that they have to sit him if they want to keep any kind of sponsorship. And it sounded to me like, listening to that press conference, that they didn't come to that conclusion on their own, that somebody led them to that conclusion and said, this is something you have to do. And this is all part of this kind of brave new world where, where the charges of domestic violence and child abuse have trumped the ability of someone on a field on a Sunday. And I think that may be new territory in some ways.
It's all talk about talent and risk. Once your talent outweighs your risk, you're fine. If your risk outweighs your talent, the opposite happens. I got to ask you this before you go. I want to read between the lines of what you just said. Essentially, you're in a situation here where you think there was some outside pressure, whether it's from sponsors or fans or the media or social media, to drive these decisions the way they were. Deactivate Hardy, do what they did with Peterson, put him on the exempt list. In your mind, from what I'm hearing, how disappointed are you that they simply just couldn't come to the right determination based on the information at hand? In fact, they had to be led there by an avalanche of criticism.
I think that the owners in this league have been able to get away with making decisions solely based on competitive interests for years and years. This is a league that if they wanted to take domestic violence seriously, they certainly would have done it after Jovan Belcher killed Cassandra Perkins, the mother of his child, and then killed himself in the Chiefs parking lot. I mean, I think there have been tragic instances, and if the ownership were really moved by domestic violence on their own, there would have been policies in place. There would have been measures in place to deal with these events before they became, a problem for the league.